Hi students, in this video we're going to look at how to calculate unknown angles that are in parallel lines. Right, so after watching this video you should be able to recall the following rules for angles in parallel lines. So we're looking at corresponding angles, co-interior angles and alternate angles, and then apply these rules to calculate the value of unknown angles. Alright, so a few things to recall. So parallel lines, parallel just means the lines never meet. Usually we denote that with arrows on the ends there to show that they're parallel. And it's also worth remembering, students, some of our rules around calculating the angles around points or triangles that we've covered in previous lessons. Alright, so we've got three rules we're looking at in this lesson. The first one looks at corresponding angles. So corresponding angles occur when we've got some parallel lines here and a transverse or another line that cuts across them. Now the corresponding angles are the same angles made by each parallel line on that transverse, on that line that cuts across them, and those angles are equal. So we just might, by shorthand, just call it the F rule, but the angles, the mathematical term we use to describe those angles is corresponding. Okay, so these corresponding angles in the same position of our parallel lines and the transverse that cuts across them, those angles are equal. Now combining that rule with our angles on a straight line being 180, we can say co-interior angles are supplementary. So let's say we've got some parallel lines here and here in our transverse that cuts across. Right? Co-interior angles are these ones here. Right? And you may have guessed it, we just call that a U rule. Okay, and say those angles there are co-interior, they are supplementary, which means they add to 180 degrees. Now our final rule we have to know is if we've got our parallel lines here, and once again if we've got our transverse that cuts across there, then our alternate angles are equal. So alternate angles, we often call this like a Z rule because you can see a bit of a Z shape going on there. And these two lines, these two angles, sorry, we call those alternate, and within that Z, in the corners, right, in the angles made by our Z shape, we call those alternate and they are equal. Now also it's worth noting that the angles next to them are also equal. So these red angles, even though it doesn't quite make a Z shape, it makes more of an S shape, those angles are also equal. Alright students, so let's look at some examples here and apply some of those rules. Alright, first one here, we've got two angles that are co-interior. So X and 72 degrees, they're inside, they're within a set of parallel lines. So we know from our rule that those angles must be supplementary. They add to 180, and that's because of our U rule. Co-interior angles are supplementary, they add to 180. Rearranging that equation by subtracting 72 from both sides, X must be 108 degrees. Alright, B. We've got 122 degrees in here, we've got X degrees over here. And so what we're going to do here is use our alternate angles rule. So it might look a bit strange, it's not quite like the neat Z rule we discussed earlier, but looking at this line, we do have alternate angles there, where X and 122, they're alternate, they match up, so those angles must be the same size. And that's according to our Z rule. Let's write that a bit neater, our Z rule there. Alright, in our next example, we've got 88 degrees here and X here. Those angles are corresponding. So according to our rules, corresponding angles are equal. So X must be 88 degrees, and that's using the F rule. Now corresponding angles in that F sort of shape are equal. Alright, in this last one, we've got two angles here, and we have to work out X in the middle. Now to help us solve this problem, I'm going to draw a third parallel line that goes through where those points cross. Now, let's see if we can solve this one from here. Alright, we've got an angle up here of 48 degrees. Now, with that new parallel line we've drawn, we can say this angle here is also 48 degrees. Using our Z rule, those angles are alternate. From the bottom, we can say we've got a 52 degree angle here. So going to that middle line again, that angle should also be 52 degrees because those angles are alternate using that Z rule. So altogether then, X should be the sum of those two angles. 48 plus 52 degrees using our alternate angles rule. We've used that rule twice, but we can just write the rule once there. So our value for X should be 100 degrees. Alright students, so after watching this video you should be able to recall the following rules for angles in parallel lines. So lines that are corresponding are equal, angles that are co-interior are supplementary, they add to 180, and alternate angles which are equal as well. And then apply these rules to calculate the value of unknown angles.